Trae Young has just been traded to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert in what is really basically a salary dump for the Atlanta Hawks as they acquire CJ McCollum's $34 million expiring contract and Corey Kispert's pretty relative and pretty decent $14 million a year contract over 4 years. This trade isn't really a shocker to pretty much anybody who's been keeping up with NBA news and NBA media. It's been rumored for basically the past 24 hours, especially with Shams coming out and saying that the Washington Wizards are Trae Young's preferred trade destination, and it just really made a lot of sense to basically anyone who's a fan of the NBA because the Wizards are a team who can afford to take in a player like Trae Young and also have what Atlanta would want in expiring contracts in both Middleton and CJ McCollum. But it was CJ McCollum who was traded in this particular instance because I think he just brings more value to Atlanta. Now, the more interesting part about this trade is that there wasn't a single pick attached from either side, and it was pretty interesting because I honestly had the Wizards having to give up maybe a second at least, or one of the first that they own, or the late first round swap that they have this year, and nothing really happened. And there was a lot of rumors saying that Atlanta probably has to give up the first round pick, and I thought, what a fucking load of bullshit. Atlanta's not going to give up a first round pick to get off Trae Young's contract. His contract isn't that bad. I mean, it's not a bad contract for a guy who's putting up 25 and 10, right? It's all right. Like, and he has a player option next year, so it's not like the worst contract in the world that you have to give up a first round pick. And Trae Young is still a very, very talented player. He's still very talented. Don't get that shit twisted. Trae Young just 2 years ago was averaging 28 and 10. And yes, his defense sucks. He's one of the worst defenders in the league, if not the worst. He is very, very ball dominant with one of the highest usage rates in like the NBA. And he does have a lot of deficiencies, but he is a offensive engine in and of itself. He is an offense, and he's still very talented. It's just very unfortunate to kind of see things play out this way, but the writing was basically on the wall, especially with the emergence of Jalen Johnson, who's become an absolute monster for Atlanta, and he is their future going forward. And Atlanta has, Versace, who hasn't really been playing all too well, but they still have that Pelicans first round pick. They still have good youth on the roster, and it just kind of run its course with Trae Young, and it seemed like the front office was not necessarily fed up, but they just believed they couldn't win at a high level with Trae Young any longer. And it was nice to kind of see both sides come to that kind of mutual agreement where Shams came out and said that Trae Young's agents and the Hawks will be looking to move Trae Young to a new home. And it was good that they came up with a mutual thing that kind of benefits both parties involved. From the Wizards' perspective, this is such a good trade because it's such a buy low. It's such a buy low kind of thing, and it could really, really pay off. It's very similar to me to that kind of Mavs deal that they made with Kyrie back in the 23 trade deadline, I want to say, where they just gave up Dorian Finney-Smith, salary filler, and like a first round pick. It's pretty similar to me in that regard because both of them are super talented players. I think it's a little different of a situation because Kyrie was due to like off the court stuff. Everyone knows Kyrie could fit on basically any team, but it was really nice to see Washington kind of buy in on this because you have a lot of young talent on your roster, and I think going forward, your probably young core is going to be Alex Sarr, Trae Johnson, maybe Bilal Coulibaly, probably Bilal Coulibaly, and Keyshawn George. And I think, kind of that role to fit is that point guard position, regardless of if Trae Young is the answer to that or not. It remains to be seen, but just having a point guard play alongside them, someone who could kind of get them into the set, ease the offense in, because it's a lot for, rookie guards or young guards like Bub Carrington or Trae Johnson to do, like run an offense like that. So getting someone more experienced to help you with that is really nice. And if the fit is good enough, and if you manage to acquire another top prospect in this year's draft class, which is loaded, then you maybe keep Trae Young. If he isn't asking for if he's asking for $70 million, then you can't give him $70 million. He's not a $70 million player. But 50, 45, I think he probably is worth it, to be honest. And if you're the Wizards, I think you kind of look at this trade and you're like, 2 to 3 years ago, people would have laughed at us for this offer. And that is true. Because you just managed to turn Jordan Poole into Trae Young. That's pretty crazy when you think about it like that, right? And the reason why I'm a big fan of this trade being made at this particular time is because there's still a lot of basketball left. And I don't think Trae Young is good enough with a roster like this to kind of push them into the play-in. So you still are in, the realm of tanking. I think you just become a more competitive, fun tanking team, like what the Jazz are doing. The Jazz are actually winning games though. They need to stop. But kind of like what the Jazz are doing, I think you become a fun team like that. And I think that just makes for really fun basketball as you kind of see how Trae Young meshes with this young core for this, for the rest of for the remainder, 40 games or so, 45 games, 50 games, I believe, are left. And you could kind of get a good gauge on how everything fits and how everything works. And if you don't like Trae Young, you could just buy them out next year too. You're not going to be good next year, I think. I don't think you're going to make a playoff push next year either. And you kind of just let him, go through the motions next year. You don't have to extend him. And if next year he does well, you can extend him then. And it's just such a good move because you didn't give up shit. You literally didn't give up. You didn't even give up AJ Johnson, Cam Whitmore, like what some people were kind of expecting to be instead of actual draft capital. You didn't give up anything. And that's something that I am a massive fan of because when you just have a talent like that, right, and in a position that you could use, in a role that you could use, like a veteran guy, you kind of just do it, especially when the asking price is expiring contracts, right? And from the Atlanta Hawks perspective, yeah, this was probably the best you might have gotten. I know there was a lot of discussion where a report came out that the kind of crux of the deal was basically done, it was basically confirmed, where it was going to be CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. That was the done deal, that was the players involved. But the kind of argument came from who's giving up draft capital because Atlanta felt like they shouldn't have to give up capital, which rightfully fucking so. Who came up with that dumbass report? Stop interviewing these general managers. I don't think half of them know what they're doing. Why would the Hawks give up a first round pick? They could literally just wait. They don't have to do it. If Trae Young accepts his contract next year, just fucking you could take that on the chin. You literally can because Tingus Pingus is expiring. It just didn't make sense to me. And a lot of Wizards fans were in my mention talking about, oh yeah, no, we're not giving up a first round pick. We're gonna get a first round pick. No, the fuck you were not. There's some delusional stuff that comes with fandom, and that's all right. But back to the point. Yeah, from the Hawks' perspective, it's just unfortunate that this is kind of all you could get for Trae Young. Because a few years ago, you would have gotten a pretty decent haul, multiple firsts, maybe a young player too. But, getting only CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert sucks, but it is what it is. You kind of just have to do that deal, rid your hands of it. Now you have a lot of flexibility financially, and you also kind of make Jalen Johnson the face of the city, face of the team. And that's something that you can definitely look forward to moving forward because this isn't like I'm trying to find something similar. This isn't like a situation where you're trading a player, you had a bad fallout and you don't have nothing to look forward to, like what the Mavs did, right? It's not like that. This is just kind of you understand it's not going to work out with this guy, but you have a pivot. You have something that you could lean back on, which is Jalen Johnson, that Pelicans first round pick, and you still have a lot of assets that you can move. And with CJ McCollum being expiring, you have 60 mil in cap or 70 mil or something like that when Tingus Pingus expires too. And there's reports that come out that they're looking to find a way to get Anthony Davis. And if you could get Anthony Davis for low, I say you go ahead and do it. Because I don't think Anthony Davis is going to cost all too much. If the asking price is that Pelicans first round pick, I probably say no. But if it's something like Kristaps Porzingis and Zachary Versace, I definitely consider that deal. Because I think Anthony Davis is a really good player. Yes, I don't think that makes you a contender either. But I think, a lineup of CJ McCollum, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Anthony Davis is still a very good lineup. And you still have Onyeka Okongwu. We still have a lot of bench depth. And now I want to talk about what CJ McCollum kind of brings to this team. I think CJ McCollum immediately helps their half-court offense. Granted, Trae Young wasn't playing and, blah, whatever. But CJ McCollum is like a plug and play guy where you could put him in immediately and he'll be effective because he's good off the ball. He's pretty good on the ball. He's not a good defender, but he's still better than Trae Young, right? But like he just fills that gap. There are some questions like maybe Jalen Johnson is going to get overtaxed in his playmaking duties, but I think that just gives all the more room for like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels to run the ball. Dyson Daniels can't fucking shoot the ball though. God damn, what happened to his shot? But yeah, I think that's good from a basketball perspective. I don't think they're going to retain CJ McCollum, by the way. Like I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know. Like there's reports he might get bought out. I think that shit was fake though. But I think like just from a basketball perspective, CJ McCollum definitely does help them. And that's something that, Hawks fans could look forward to. And, I also want to talk about kind of the expectations on the Hawks before the season started, because I think a lot of expectations were pretty sky high. Me too. I thought, they could be a real dark horse in the East, especially because the conference was so weak. And, you just kind of had an opening to be the third best team in the East. Maybe you could jump the Cavs and the Knicks too, but, that just didn't happen. It didn't work out, unfortunately. And you kind of, look back at it and you're like, damn, what went wrong? And really nothing went wrong. There wasn't really anything you could fault for the Hawks front office. They did their best to build a good team around Trae Young. And I honestly do think they succeeded in that, because I think this roster itself right now is a very good roster with quality play. You have Dyson, you have Jalen Pingis, you have the first overall pick, Risashe, you have Onyeka, who's been playing great. You have a lot of quality players on the team. It just sucks. And, next year, I think the Hawks fans could definitely look forward to next year, especially with the cap and that pick. Because, oh my God, imagine you get Darren Peterson. Oh my goodness. And can you imagine that? Like Darren Peterson, Dyson, maybe Risashe, I don't fucking know at this point. But, Jalen Johnson, Anthony Davis, that's a really good future. That's a really bright future. And I my boy Pee Wee the Plug said in his video he did about Trae Young's trade today, the sky might be the limit for Atlanta. And I think so too, because sometimes you just have to hit that reset button. It's time for the Pelicans to do that shit too, because fuck, they suck. And Zion's a freaky ass motherfucker. What's wrong with Zion? But yeah, that's that. I'm trying to think if I have any more thoughts I could kind of put out there, because it's a lot to really, take in and ingest, because this is the first trade of the season and it's such a massive trade, but it's not massive to the point where it's league altering, because it's a shitty team getting a good player and a decent team getting worse, right? Like objectively, there's not really a ton of like kind of impact from it, but it's still a big trade in that in the sense of things where it's Trae Young getting moved. But yeah, I don't think I have much else to say. Just let me know what you think in the comments. I do think both teams are pretty much winners in this trade, but if I had to pick, like, the Wizards are like, in 2-3 years we could look at this as like a complete fleece from the Wizards perspective, and even if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. It is what it is. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think, how you like this trade. If you're a Hawks fan, let me know how you feel, because I definitely think you guys have a bright future, even though it might be a little bit bittersweet right now. And I think if you're a Wizards fan, you should be happy. You get to watch some good ball. And yeah, take care.